Before there was Persephone, before Orpheus, before Dante, before anyone dared to tell a story about going down into the place where the dead sleep and coming back, there was a Sumerian queen who did it first. She did it deliberately. She stripped naked at every gate. She was murdered. She was hung on a hook in the dark for 3 days. And she came back. This is the story of Inanna, queen of heaven and earth, and her descent into the great below. And I want you to understand something before we begin. This is not myth the way we usually mean myth. This is not a fantasy. This is not a primitive explanation for why winter exists. This is a story carved into clay tablets 4,000 years ago, and when scholars first translated it fully in the 20th century, they sat with it in silence for a long time. Because it wasn't primitive. It was profound. It was terrifying. It was psychologically true in ways that modern therapy is only now catching up to. Let us begin. Who was Inanna? Inanna is the oldest named goddess in recorded human literature. Let that sit for a moment. The oldest. Before Athena, before Isis, before Kali, before any goddess you have probably heard of, there was Inanna. She was worshipped in ancient Sumer, in the land that is now Iraq, in the cities of Uruk and Nippur, for at least 3,000 years. The great poet Inanna, who lived around 2300 BCE and is herself the earliest named author in human history, male or female, wrote hymns of devotion to Inanna. We have those hymns. We can still read them. Inanna was not a gentle goddess. She was not soft. She was not a goddess of hearth and home and quiet prayers. She was the goddess of love and war simultaneously, and the Sumerians saw no contradiction in that. Because anyone who has truly loved knows that love is a kind of war. Inanna was desire and devastation in the same body. She was the morning star. She was Venus, blazing and untouchable before sunrise. She was the patron of the city of Uruk. She collected something called the divine laws and gifts of civilization. Writing, music, descent into the underworld, the art of lovemaking, the art of the sword, the craft of the scribe. She held all of these, and she held them by going to the god of wisdom, getting him drunk, and taking them from him when he wasn't paying attention. That is the kind of goddess Inanna was. She was magnificent. And then, for reasons the text hints at but never fully explains, she decided to go down. The decision. The story begins without preamble. It begins with a line that should give you chills. From the great above, she turned her ear to the great below. That is the entire opening. No explanation. No warning. From the great above, from the realm of sky and life and divine power, she turned her ear to the great below. To Kor. To the land of the dead. To the place the Sumerians called the House of Dust, where the dead eat clay and where feathers like birds, where light never enters, where the queen of the dead rules in eternal shadow. Why did she go? Some scholars say she went to attend the funeral rites of her sister's husband, Gugalanna, the bull of heaven, who had recently died. Some say she went to challenge her sister's power. Some say she went because Inanna could not resist going. Because the one frontier left to her was death, and Inanna collected frontiers the way other gods collected temples. The ancient text says she abandoned the temples of heaven and earth. She abandoned her offices. She abandoned everything that defined her position and her power in the world above. She packed up the 7 the sacred laws and symbols of her divine identity. She put on her crown. She put on her lapis lazuli necklace. She put on her double strand of beads. She put on her breastplate, her golden ring, her measuring rod and line. She dressed herself in all the power she possessed. And then she told her servant Ninshubber, her most faithful companion, her minister, her second self, she said, "If I do not return in 3 days, go to the gods. Beg them for my life. Do not rest until I am brought back." Then she went to the first gate. The 7 gates. The underworld in Sumerian mythology is not one place you arrive at. It is a descent. 7 walls. 7 gates. Each gate guarded by a gatekeeper named Neti, who serves the queen of the dead, Ereshkigal, Inanna's older sister. Inanna arrived at the first gate and knocked. Neti came to the gate and asked, "Who are you, and why are you here?" Inanna said, "I am Inanna, Queen of Heaven. I have come to witness the funeral rites of the Bull of Heaven." Neti went to Ereshkigal and told her. And Ereshkigal, queen of the dead, who had ruled alone in darkness since before memory, said, "And I want you to hear this slowly," she said, "bolt the 7 gates. Open each gate only a crack. And as she enters, remove 1 article of her clothing at each gate. Let her enter bowed low." Think about what this means. Ereshkigal is not welcoming her sister. She is not grieving with her. She is stripping her. Gate by gate, she is removing everything that makes Inanna powerful, everything that makes Inanna Inanna. This is the law of the underworld. No one arrives here in glory. No one keeps their crown in the land of the dead. At the first gate, Neti removed her crown. Inanna asked, "What is this?" Neti said, "Quiet, Inanna. The laws of the underworld are perfect. Do not question them." At the second gate, her lapis lazuli necklace was removed. At the third gate, her double strand of beads. At the fourth gate, her breastplate, the breastplate called Come, Man, Come. At the fifth gate, her golden ring. At the sixth gate, her measuring rod and line, the tools of her divine judgment. At the seventh gate, the last gate, her royal robe was removed. She entered the underworld naked. She entered it with nothing. No symbol, no attribute, no instrument of power. She was no longer the queen of heaven. She was just a woman, naked, in the dark. And Ereshkigal rose from her throne and killed her. The text says, Ereshkigal fastened on Inanna the eye of death. She spoke against her the word of wrath. She uttered against her the cry of guilt. She struck her. And the naked dead woman was turned into a piece of rotting meat, and she was hung on a hook. That is the end of Inanna. For 3 days and 3 nights, she hung there. What happened above? Above, the world began to die. Inanna was the goddess of love and fertility and the morning star. When she went into the underworld, she took all of that with her. The bull did not mount the cow. The donkey did not nuzzle the jenny. The man did not press against the woman in the night. Birth stopped. The cycle of life arrested itself because its engine was gone. The world was becoming a place without desire, without generation, without continuation. 3 days passed. And then Ninshubber, Inanna's faithful servant, the one she had told to wait exactly 3 days, began to do what she had been instructed. She went to the temples. She tore at her face and eyes. She dressed in a single garment like a beggar. She beat the drum of mourning in the assembly places. She went first to Enlil, the father of the gods, the lord of wind and storm, and she prostrated herself and begged for Inanna's life. Enlil said no. He said, Inanna chose to go to the great below. She wanted what is not to be wanted. She chose what is not to be chosen. She descended, and that is the end of it. Ninshubber went to Nanna, the moon god. He said the same. No. She went to Enki, the god of wisdom, the god of the sweet waters, the craftiest and most compassionate of all the gods. Enki listened. Enki was troubled. And Enki acted. From beneath his fingernail, he took a little dirt. He fashioned from it 2 small creatures, sexless, neither male nor female, unnamed. He gave them the food of life. He gave them the water of life. He sent them down through the 7 gates like ghosts, like flies, like nothing, because they were nothing, and nothingness can go where queens cannot. He gave them a specific instruction. When you find Ereshkigal, she will be moaning. She will be moaning because she has just given birth. She will be saying, "Oh my inside, oh my outside." Echo her. If she says, "Oh my heart," you say, "Oh your heart." If she says, "Oh her liver," you say, "Oh her liver." Mourn with her. That is all. And she will offer you gifts. She will offer you the river in its fullness, the field in its richness. Do not take them. Ask only for the corpse that hangs on the hook. Ask her to give you Inanna. The return of the queen. The 2 small creatures descended through the 7 gates like shadows. They found Ereshkigal on her throne, and she was in agony. The text says she was writhing like a woman in labor, or like a person in the throes of dying. She was crying out, "Oh my insides! Oh my outside! Oh my belly, oh!" And the 2 creatures echoed her exactly. "Oh your insides! Oh your outside! Oh your belly!" And she looked at them. No one had ever done this before. No one had ever come to the land of the dead simply to be with her in her pain. No one had ever mourned with her. She was the queen of death, and everyone feared her, and no one had ever sat with her in her suffering. She was moved. She offered them gifts. The rivers in their fullness. The fields. They refused. They asked only for the corpse on the hook. Ereshkigal gave it to them, somewhat grudgingly. They sprinkled it with the food of life and the water of life. And Inanna arose. But the underworld does not give back what it takes. There is a law here deeper than even the gods. No one leaves the great below without sending someone back in their place. The Anunnaki, the judges of the dead, surrounded Inanna as she rose. They said, "Who is this who leaves the underworld? Whoever leaves the underworld must give another in their place. If Inanna wishes to return to the great above, she must give someone to the great below." And so they escorted her up, gate by gate. And at each gate, her items were returned to her. Her robe, her ring, her measuring rod, her breastplate, her beads, her necklace, her crown. Gate by gate she was reassembled. She was becoming Inanna again. But with her came the demons of the underworld, the Gala. They clung to her like shadows. And they had their instructions. Whoever comes with us gets one. You must give us someone. Inanna emerged into the upper world. She had done what no god had done. She had been to the great below and come back. She was alive. And now she had to choose. The choice. The Gala followed Inanna through the world, waiting. They would not release her until she named someone to take her place. First they came to Ninshubber, Inanna's faithful servant, the one who had mourned and begged and saved her life. The demons pointed at her and said, "This one." Inanna refused. She said, "Ninshubber dressed in mourning for me. She beat the drum for me. She wept for me at every temple. She saved my life. I will not give her to you. Take someone else." They came to the city of Umma, and there sat SERA, the god of music, one of Inanna's sons, dressed in mourning, weeping in grief. The demons pointed at him. Inanna refused. They came to the city of Badtibra and found another of her sons in mourning, dressed in dirt and sackcloth. She refused again. But then they came to the city of Uruk. And on his throne, in his great garden, shining and dressed in splendid garments, not mourning, not wearing rags, not prostrate with grief, but seated on a throne, in his full glory, in the sunlight, sat Dumuzi. Dumuzi, Inanna's husband, the shepherd king, the love of her life. And Inanna looked at him, and she fastened on him the eye of death. She gave him to them. She gave them Dumuzi. What does this mean? I need to stop here because this is the moment that made scholars fall silent. Every person who has read this text in translation has had to sit with that moment. The woman who was tortured and killed and resurrected and who fought for her life, she comes home, and she gives her husband to the underworld because he didn't mourn for her. Is that cold? Is that cruel? Is that unfair? Or is it something else entirely? The Jungian psychologist Sylvia Brinton Pereira, who wrote an entire book called Descent to the Goddess about this very myth, argues that this is the most psychologically true moment in the entire story. Because Inanna does not go into the underworld out of love. She goes out of her own sovereign desire. She descends because there is something in the depths that she needs to face. And when she comes back, she is not the same. She cannot be the same. No one who goes down is the same when they come up. And what she discovers when she returns is that the person closest to her, the one who shared her bed and her throne, did not even grieve for her, did not even change his clothes, sat in the sun, in his beautiful garden, unchanged, as if she had simply gone to market. That betrayal, that discovery, she gave it to the underworld. She gave her own grief down there. Others read Dumuzi differently. Some ancient sources suggest Dumuzi was not heartless but was transformed during her absence, that he had to sit on her throne and rule in her place, that sitting there in glory was his duty, not his indifference. And there are later versions of the myth where Inanna relents, partly, where she says, "Let Dumuzi go to the underworld for half the year, and let his sister Jeshtananna, who wept and searched and offered herself in his place, let her go the other half." And so it was. Dumuzi in the underworld for half a year. Jeshtananna for the other half. And that is why the Sumerians said, The world goes cold and dark for half the year and blooms again for the other half. Because the shepherd king descends. And when he comes back up, Inanna, still fierce, still sovereign, still wearing her crown, opens her arms to him again. What we take from this? I want to tell you something about why this story survived for 4,000 years. Thousands of myths have been lost. Entire civilizations of story have gone to silence. This one survived. It survived because it tells the truth. There is no version of a meaningful life that does not include descent. There is no version of becoming fully human that does not include a passage through darkness. Every tradition knows this. The Christian mystics called it the dark night of the soul. The Buddhists call it the bardos. The Hindus know the goddess Kali who strips away everything false. The Japanese know Izanami in the land of the dead. The Greeks know Persephone swallowing pomegranate seeds in the dark. But Inanna's story is different in a way that is important. She chose to go. She went of her own power and her own will. She was not taken. She was not tricked. She was not punished. She turned her ear to the great below because something in her knew that she had not yet met the fullness of herself. The Queen of Heaven was not complete without knowing the Queen of the underworld. Inanna was not whole without Ereshkigal. And Ereshkigal, notice this, Ereshkigal was also changed by the encounter. The creatures who came to mourn with her, to echo her pain, she had never been witnessed before. The Queen of Death had never been mourned. And being witnessed, being met in her pain with compassion rather than fear, was what allowed her to give Inanna back. The lesson of this story is not about death. It is about wholeness. You cannot be everything you are capable of being without going into the places that terrify you. You cannot be whole while avoiding the things in yourself that feel like death. The loss of a relationship. The end of an identity. The thing that strips you of your crown and your necklace and your breastplate one piece at a time until you are naked and hung in the dark, no longer recognizable as who you thought you were. That is not punishment. That is initiation. And the woman who comes back is not the woman who went down. She has met death and she is wearing it differently now. She has looked at everything she clung to and she has let it be taken from her, gate by gate, and she has come back with all of it returned, and she is something more. Something the world could not have made her except by that passage. There is also this, the God who saved her was not the most powerful God. It was not Enlil, Lord of Storms. It was not Nanna, the shining moon. It was Enki, the god of wisdom and water and clever thought, who fashioned creatures out of nothing and sent them down not with weapons or divine light, but with a capacity to feel, to mourn with another in their grief. The thing that defeated death, in this ancient Sumerian story, was empathy. 4,000 years ago, they understood, the only way to reach a being in unbearable darkness is not with power or argument or commands. It is to sit with them in it. To echo their pain back to them. To say, I hear you. I see you. Oh, your insides. Oh, your outside. That is what broke Ereshkigal open. That is what allowed Inanna to come home. The oldest story. We think of mythology as the past. As stories that old civilizations told because they didn't have science yet. They didn't understand why the seasons changed, so they made up a story about a goddess and her husband taking turns in the underworld. But that is not what this story is. This story is a map. A map that was drawn 4,000 years ago by people who understood something about the interior geography of human experience that is still true today. The descent is real. The stripping is real. The hanging in the dark is real. The 3 days without rescue are real. And the return is real too. Not guaranteed. Not automatic. But real. The question the story asks is not whether you will descend. It is whether you will prepare. Whether you will tell your ninshubber, your most faithful companion, the part of yourself that stays above, to come for you if you don't come back. Whether you will let the slow descent happen gate by gate without fighting the loss of each piece of yourself, trusting that what is being stripped away is not you but the costume you wore before you knew who you were. And maybe this too, whether, when someone you love is in their great below, you are willing to send something small and genderless and unarmed down into the dark with them. Not to rescue them with power. Just to be with them in it. The Sumerians knew. Enki knew. You cannot drag someone out of their underworld by force. You can only sit with them in the dark until they are ready to come back to themselves. And if you do that, if you are patient and compassionate enough to echo the pain of someone in the depths, sometimes even the Queen of Death will relent. She hung on a hook in the dark for 3 days. She came back wearing her crown. Her name was Inanna, and she was worshipped for 3,000 years. Ancient stories. Eternal truth. This has been SERA Mythology.